The House Foreign Affairs Committee held a hearing today to discuss intelligence reports suggesting Russia may have paid the Taliban to kill U.S. troops. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo did not comply with the committee's request to testify. For more, let's bring in John Gans. He's the Director of Communications and Research for the University of Pennsylvania's Perry Worldhouse Global Policy Center. He also served as chief speechwriter for former Defense Secretary Ash Carter. John, welcome. I know you watched that hearing today. What do you see as the key takeaways from it?
Well, I think the key takeaway, there was a lot of action on Capitol Hill today. I think one of the key takeaways that I came to it with was that really 2020 is an election year, and what we saw on Capitol Hill, even over such a serious issue as the bounty issue and the Afghanistan issue, is that members of both parties were discussing it in gotcha terms, or at least trying to sort of avoid the gotcha moment of it for Republicans and trying to sort of protect the White House from some of the sort of accusations and some of the inferences that we've heard from Democrats on this issue. So, and I saw Secretary of Defense Esper, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I think Mike Pompeo's decision to avoid this, we're all sort of driven by care about the politics and trying to avoid mistakes in a very contentious issue at a very contentious partisan time. And so I think for those of us and for most Americans who are just trying to get to the bottom of this issue, the Capitol Hill hearings were actually, there was a lot of heat, but not a lot of light. And I don't think anybody came away from these much smarter about the issue of the bounties and really the issue of why the Trump administration didn't react more clearly and to a degree hasn't reacted more forcefully to what our intelligence, what we're hearing our intelligence agencies have found.
Well, let's dig into this a little bit more. The president has called the allegations, as you know, about these Russian bounties a hoax. How does that actually line up with what we know so far, including some of the testimony from people like the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley?
Well, I think what I saw today was the chairman and the Secretary of Defense taking this report and taking this information very seriously. You could see almost with the pain with which they sort of were trying to express how seriously they take the care and well-being of the people who serve under them in Afghanistan and anywhere in harm's way. They were talking a lot about some of the sort of tensions we've seen at home. They were talking the same way about the troops here at home as they do about the troops in Afghanistan. They want these people to be safe. So for them, I think, and to a degree, what I saw in the faces of Esper and Milley was that any hint that something is going on that could threaten the well-being of the troops, they take seriously as a matter of course. I think both Esper, especially the Secretary of Defense, went out of his way to sort of protect the president and say, you know, not all of this was confirmed. A lot of this was some speculation, but they all said that this was a serious issue that needed to be taken seriously. And I believe that they didn't distance themselves from the president, but the seriousness with which they took the accusation and the seriousness with which the president has tweeted about the accusation suggests that there is a difference of opinion there.
It was interesting. In the House Armed Services hearing today, Defense Secretary Esper said he never saw a briefing with the word bounty in it. What's your read on that, John?
It was a very odd question and to a degree a very careful answer. So, you know, it's hard to really put into words. It was very specifically asking about that word as if that word would trigger everything differently. There's, you know, I think anybody who's spent time in government or anybody who's spent time looking at intelligence would tell you, you know, sometimes different words are used to mean different things. And there's a lot of ways to describe a bounty without using that word. And so I thought that the question was particularly, was artfully sort of drafted, and I thought Esper's was done the same. My hunch is that, you know, the Secretary of Defense knows that word means a lot, but like I said, there's a lot of different ways you can describe a bounty without using the word.
And after these allegations of Russia paying bounties on U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan, Secretary Esper did make a point to reassure troops that he was taking any potential threats seriously. How would you evaluate Secretary Esper's handling of this so far?
I think this is another moment of tension between which Esper sort of finds himself in the middle of, between the civil side, the political side of the chain of command, the President of the United States and the White House, and the troops, the sort of military side, the uniform side. And Esper sort of finds himself in the middle there. And Esper served honorably in the Army and has a long career in defense and knowing these issues. I think what I saw was a person who was caught in the middle of a messy situation, and this bounty issue is just one of many issues we've seen in recent weeks. We saw it over, using troops at home to sort of quell or at least break up protests, in some cases violently in Lafayette Square and elsewhere. We've seen it over the pressure the White House put on the Defense Department to not promote Lieutenant Colonel Alex Vindman, who of course was on the NSC and testified against the president in the Ukraine hearings and the impeachment hearings last year. And the White House put pressure on Esper to make sure that the Vindman wasn't promoted, and Vindman resigned and retired yesterday. And then we see it again over this bounty issue. And so I think that Esper does not have a lot of good options, and I think he is trying to find a way through a very challenging time in the civil-military relationship. But I think so far he is always sort of a day late and to a degree a dollar short in trying to both reinforce the norms and values and traditions that the military sort of seeks to uphold and expects its members to uphold, and reassure the troops that he's got their backs. He always seems to be sort of a step behind because he's reacting to the president. And, so far that performance has been worrying, and I think so far that performance in recent weeks has been wanting. I don't think there's a lot of people in Washington who are very happy with Secretary Esper. But what I think we see is, what I worry about is what's going to happen in the months ahead. There's a lot of time between now and the election. There's a lot of potential tension that could develop in the days after the election. Should it be unclear who wins? Should the president decide to sort of claim it's rigged, or try to sort of use the military to sort of suggest that he's going to try and stay in power? There's a lot of potential landmines ahead, and what I think we all worry about is that Secretary Esper so far hasn't been very good at missing them. And what I worry is that could have real damaging implications for the civil-military relationship and the Defense Department as an institution.
All right, John Gans for us. John, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me on.